Hello and welcome to another episode of the Business of the Starving Artist with Hayden Woods, where it's our job to get you from a starving artist to at least a surviving artist. As a disclaimer, I'm a music teacher and a musician, and thus a lot of the business experience I have is geared more towards that, but we can still use this opportunity to kind of help any self-employed and creative individual. Before we begin, I know we missed a week of the podcast, and I apologize for that, and had some personal family stuff going on that needed to be taken care of, but we are good now. Today's episode is prompted over some thoughts I've been having about my particular business and deciding how to shape essentially the next 5 years. And in one of those earlier episodes, we had talked about the potential of either hiring on more teachers or expanding into other areas, which then leads to my main question on whether it's better or worse or about the same to switch over from being a sole proprietorship, self-employed, versus opening and having an LLC, a limited liability company. To help me with shaping this episode, we're going to be looking at Forbes.com's article, Sole Proprietorship versus LLC. Here's what you need to know. I'm going to give a lot of my own details on my self-employment side of things before we do anything with the LLC. For our purposes, we want to look at them as two slightly different things. All of us who are working for ourselves typically start under a sole proprietorship. But as an LLC, you kind of structure yourself a little bit more as a business. And there are lots of things that we should think about when we want to make this transition, or if we find that remaining as a sole proprietor is the better option. So what is the sole proprietorship? According to this article, on Forbes Advisor, a sole proprietorship is an unincorporated business that's owned by the individual running it. So in this case, my example is me. It is the default choice for anyone who runs a business but hasn't set up another formal business structure like the LLC. There's no separation between your personal and your business assets and expenses, and you're responsible for all of the debts and obligations. It can only have one owner, which is me. If there's another business partner, it just becomes a partnership, which then would require that transition. Freelancers, consultants often choose to file as sole proprietors, as it's just the easiest way to kind of get started. Depending on the type of business and depending on the income structure, it would determine whether you should stay as a sole or move into the LLC. Again, for myself, I'm responsible for everything that I have to do. And actually, right here, I have this year's entire income and expense report, and it includes all of my accounts, whether that's for business spending or personal spending, but it's all in there so that I can look at it and see what I have used for my business versus just personal things that cannot be written off. If I had a business, that would be taken care of on that end, and then I would just be, as an owner, just paid out from the business that way. An LLC, again, limited liability company, is a business entity that's created by filing paperwork with your state. So this would be like a state registered business, but it helps you separate the business side from the personal side. If you screw up something on the business side, like if you, don't pay your credit correctly, like I did, on the personal, when I had that episode, that was all on me because it was all run through my personal finances. Now, if I had registered as an LLC and did that, the business would have been held responsible And yes, I, as the acting party in that, would probably feel obligated on the business side, but on a personal financial side, I would be a little bit more protected. Um, Additionally, let's see. If you have employees, an LLC can help shield you from liabilities of your employer's actions or your employees' actions, excuse me. And this is where I'm considering mostly if I were to hire somebody as a teacher, then I would maybe start considering making this move. But we'll get into that a little bit later. When should you open the LLC? Well, there's, again, a few things to consider. Do you want to expand your company, or do you want more than one owner, one person in your network, essentially? That would be easier to do with the LLC, because then you can kind of keep everyone a little bit separated rather than having it rely on your personal finances and situation to be able to do that. We already talked about protecting the personal assets from the financial and legal liabilities that come with running a business, and you can take advantage of some business-related tax credits. Again, a lot of that can be done just knowing the tax code. When you're running this business by yourself, you're not obligated as a sole proprietor to have to separate your expenses. Now, I still, at the very least, have my housing expenses separated from my other account, just so that I know that there's always money available for rent, utilities, essentially the home office side of things. But if you can open up another account for your business, it kind of helps you be able to distinguish what is business versus personal. Again, my binder has all of my stuff, which means I'm kind of stuck having to do the extra paperwork and make sure that I don't allocate something to the wrong deduction, or allocate something that isn't even qualifiable as a tax deduction. An LLC offers business income, Schedule C, pay personal income tax on your profits, which, I mean, you kind of still do anyway. You're essentially responsible paying for the self-employment tax, which, as a sole proprietor, if you're paying those, you can write some of that off as the employer side. But again, check with a actual CPA, not just myself. The LLC designation doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have employees. Usually it's still treated as, if you're a single member, you're still treated as self-employed. But you can elect to be taxed as a corporation, which can allow you to pay the taxes through the business rather than through yourself in its entirety. Again, this article is even good enough to say, talk to an experienced accountant about this. So, you kind of have to figure out what works best for you. And obviously, the other underlying thing is you could technically, I guess, say that opening an LLC gives a quote-unquote sense of legitimacy, mostly just so that you have official paperwork and an official name. But, I mean, I haven't really had to deal with a lot of that. Whether you choose them, the formation processes cost largely depend on your state. So again, if I go to, let's see, Montana, LLC, registration? Registration costs. Is this something that you're going to want to file? I don't want the ads. Well, we'll just continue on the Forbes train, where it just says how to start an LLC in Montana. If we scroll down, skimming through, there's a lot of things you kind of have to do, and you also have to do some research to just make sure that everything is correct. what does it say here? Before starting, you have to create an online ePass account. I believe this is just through the state so that you can file all these things. Research and reserve the LLC business name. When you're forming a business, it's usually filed as like a trademark or copyright or something like that. So that just means that you have to be able to take the name that you want. If I were to become an LLC, I would want to change the name because right now I just run myself under Venmo Woods-Music or just my name, which works when it's just you by yourself. But if you've got, again, a full business, I don't think I'd want that to be the name of it. So you have to kind of research that. Get your own web domain, which again is just the website. Again, I have one. It's going to be changing here once I figure out how I'm going to structure it, but it's at least there. Hire a registered agent. I believe this would be yourself. Let's see. If no one meets these stipulations, let's see. A registered agent is a must. The person or business receives legal documents on behalf of the company. So that would mostly just be you yourself. You can hire someone else, but that cost, it depends. Let's see. File your LLC documents. This was written when... Oh, this was updated in May of 2023. So it should be fairly accurate. There's a processing fee of $70. Again, you can kind of write that off just because you're establishing a business. You have to do a lot of extra things on top of that. You must file an annual report on your income and your expenses and just kind of what you've been doing. That's $20. You're paying taxes. If you're doing it as a corporation, you have to file all those as a business, and then you get a separate employee identification number. Again, when you're self-employed, you just use your social security number. And then you have to create some kind of an agreement on how the business is run. It's not required in Montana, it looks like, but I mean, you might as well just be prepared anyway. It also kind of helps when, let's say, we move somewhere. It helps to have that structure that you can just take to another state if we move out of state and be able to basically get back off the ground. All that being said, what's the best option? For me, right now, it still makes sense to stay as a sole proprietor because it's just me doing every aspect of the business, between the teaching itself to all the admin work to the taxing or tax filings and accounting to the marketing and advertising. So it doesn't make sense. Now, I also don't make so much that I have to, how do I want to say this? I don't make so much that I've got a lot of extra liabilities to deal with. The most I have right now is my asthmatic cat, and then making sure that my housing expenses are paid, car insurance is paid, phone bills paid, and then invest towards that eventual retirement. So I'm not too worried about it. Now, again, if I were forming a group, like a performing group that goes anywhere and performs, I would probably try to file that group under its own thing, just so we can kind of keep it separate. If I were to, when I tried to open the homeschool band, the idea would have been to form a business around that and then convert that into a nonprofit for the community. That didn't really take off like I was hoping it would have. It's just circumstances, and I would rather focus on the things that are working really well. Teaching lessons, performing. If I were to hire on another teacher, then yes, I would be definitely looking more into this. But for the moment, it just makes more sense to stay self-employed and not worry about the company side yet. That being said, a lot of creatives are probably not going to need an LLC by any means. For other self-employed fields, however, I will use my sister's cleaning business as an example. Right now, she's the only one, so it just makes sense that she doesn't have to form a business yet. But if she wanted to hire somebody on to kind of help her in any way, shape, or form, then it would probably be better if she did file to become an LLC to kind of protect herself and keep her personal finances out of the business side, but also allow the chance to, like, let's say, because we worked for a company where the owner sold his business to another business owner in the valley. That's always an option too. Like, if I were to move, I can't just go, okay, who wants all of these students? That wouldn't make too much sense, and I had to split them up. But if there was a business on it, that would make it a little bit easier. But again, for a lot of us creatives, I'm not going to worry too much about moving into the LLC, but it is something to keep in mind. So with all that said, this one's going to be a pretty short episode, but that's okay. We got more coming for you now that we're back and should be on the regular. So thank you so much for listening to The Business of the Starving Artist. If you would like and comment and share and all the generic social media asks, again, that we kind of have to do if we're going to make this work, I would greatly appreciate it. Tip jar. I'm going to get this pointing thing down one of these days. Tip jar is right there for Venmo. Again, kind of helps with gas now that it's cold out. Right now it's record low. What does it say? 15 below in the Gallatin Valley in Montana. So gas is going to get eaten up just by trying to keep the car started and going. So any little bit helps. With that being said, thank you so much for listening, and until next time.